Hello and welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me in another of my wonderful interviews. Today we're going to have a look at a piece of medical equipment which is one of many that have been suppressed. The powers that be don't want you to be as healthy as you might think, and so various things have come about, been discovered, invented, all those sort of good things, and some of them were so good that the powers that be thought, we're not going to make any money out of this, so we'll suppress it, or at least that's what I think. Let's find out about it from my guest today, who's called Phil, and joins me now. Hello, Phil.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on the show and offering to tell us about one of many of these various things. I mean, we've heard of people like Tesla and the Rife machines and things like that. We've also had various other sort of strange things that people have rediscovered or are using energy and vibration with. So it'll be fascinating to find out another one that may well be of advantage to people who are suffering health problems. So what are we going to be talking about today, Phil?
I'd rather show than tell. It may
Okay.
look unimpressive, but this is what we're going to be talking about, the orgonometer. Doesn't look like much, especially considering you can conjure this off of just what you'd find in a grocery store and a DIY store, but I'll talk about the history of it a little bit. We're rolling back the clock to, oh, I should also mention, neither myself or my host are medical experts, and I'm not telling anybody to use this or anything else I mention in place of talking to a qualified doctor. Let me make that perfectly clear. I'm not trying to steer people away from from the usual cancer treatments. What I am saying is this does merit some examination and some research. So
Right.
with that out of the way,
Yeah.
this was invented in the year 1940, if I'm not mistaken. Not in this form. It came in the form of a box big enough to actually get into. And it was created by Wilhelm Reich, who highly intelligent man, although questionable character. He's a bit dubious in terms of his ethics book, but I'm just going to be talking about his inventions, not his ethos.
Right.
And his theory evolved out of a careful critique on psychoanalysis, where he developed the idea that you could heal people using orgone energy. Subject to a lot of experimentation, he found that you could not isolate it as it was anywhere, but you could aggregate it and you could accumulate it. So we created this, and what you'll see here is you may have guessed this is made out of a tin. Well, the purpose of that is it's metal, i.e. non-aluminium. It's a Tesco's potato tin, as a matter of fact.
Oh,
It
right.
then has some cotton put into it. We then take the cotton and we layer it with steel wool. Then we go back to back. So cotton, steel wool, cotton, and the final layer of steel is the tin itself. And do you understand how pain works in the human body?
Well, I understand that it hurts.
On a biological level, what you get is you get a signal that starts in whether part of you is hurt, and the signal will travel up the body to the brain, back down to the
Right.
brain to the body to say, issue this intensity of pain, this type in this area.
Right.
That's it's done in electromagnetic language. And in the case of the organometer, the hypothesis, I'm not formally presenting this as fully proven, is that by layering these materials back to back, being ferromagnetic and non-ferromagnetic, what you get is an isolated and concentrated type of electromagnetic current that so closely resembles the pain relief response in the brain biologically that the body or the subconscious can't tell that it's being spoofed. The comparison might be a very good vocal impression.
Oh, okay.
And Reich was making these. He originally intended to cure cancer with them. I've never experimented with that. But what I can say is he was shut down for, among other reasons, jeopardizing the cancer industry. At least that's my reading of it. And on the subject of the organometer itself, I'll talk a bit about my personal history with it. I was uh, playing a football game well, e-football with an ex-friend of mine, then friend, who had something called post-vasectomy pain disorder. Do you know what that is?
That does sound rather grim. No, I don't.
Whenever someone gets a vasectomy, there is a thin chance it will feel like somebody is punching you right where it counts every day for the rest of your life. And the
Not
doctors
pleasant.
didn't bother to inform him of this. They just said, well, we didn't tell you. Why would we? Their attitude was quite spiteful, actually. It was, oh, what? Did we not tell you? Huh? And
Yes.
I had an orgonometer a lot worse looking than this. It was literally held together with duct tape and an amateur attempt at stitch work. And don't take my word for it. We'll get to how you can demonstrate this for yourself. I gave it to him and he used it, and the pain went from about 7 out of 10 to about 1. And I originally took it as a joke, thinking he's just being really mean. But he maintained that it was true, and he's not a very good liar, so I could tell he was telling the truth. Uh, his family said that he was grimacing less and sleeping better. So that told me, okay, I am actually on to something here. I was feeling something off of it myself, just pointing it at myself feels a bit like it varies from person to person. Some people say they feel colder or warmer. Me, it makes me feel slightly more emotional, which I think that might be related to personal trauma, which I'm not going to delve deep into. But there are many ways to measure the effect, which I'll come around to. And I gave it then to a florist who lives up the road from me now, and in her feet she had pain in both. Took the pain almost completely out of one, and the other not as powerful, but it did weaken it. I then gave it to the man who runs the vinyl record store for arthritis, and the pain faded dramatically. I couldn't name everybody that I've provided one of these to and been told that they've felt better. I'm just going up some of the more highlights, the bigger examples. I gave one to two girls who had juvenile arthritis, and both of them said they felt significant pain relief. And bear in mind, this was on a very crude example. I was dealing in much messier, less effective ones than what you saw before. And it was effective. One of them even asked if she'd let me, if I'd let her take a picture with me, to which I said yes. So, fellas, it does have merits, clearly.
Okay. So what's going on then? You said it was a sort of like a magnetic thing. Now we did have a lady on the show some time ago who developed with somebody else what she calls is a puck, and it was a plastic bowl with a load of magnets on the inside, very small, quite strong magnets, and the puck is focused in such a way as the magnetic force is coming forward. Of course, these magnets are quite expensive, and so therefore this thing costs a lot more. Now, what you've just illustrated there is that you could effectively go down to your supermarket, grab a tin of potatoes, as in your case, and a whole load of Brillo pads or some such thing, which is wire wool, effectively, and a bit of cotton, and you could produce something very cheaply. So,
Yeah.
what's actually happening in this then?
Well, I know it sounds too good to be true, but I want to make a disclaimer. I don't formally sell these things, and if you want to learn how to create one, I have a video in which you can learn how. You don't have to pay me a penny to do it. I'm not in this
Right.
for the money, and I'll get into the reasons why soon enough. What's going on is, I think I mentioned it earlier, also the spoofing of the pain relief response in the human system.
Yes.
What's more, ways you can measure the effect of this is if you take a photograph under a Kirlian camera, what you end up with is you will see a purple, reddish, sort of ultraviolet haze coming out of this that indicates an effectiveness. I've also got cryogenic experiments to point out. We took two glasses of water, and one of them we froze on its own, the other we froze with an organometer pointed towards it. The first one froze as you would expect, an average frozen glass of water. The second one, however, and I've got this on footage if you check out my channel. Do you mind if I point a business card out just for a reference point?
No, of course.
It is. Just let it come into focus.
I can put the links in the description anyway.
Okay, that's I think you can read Anomaly Research Labs from there. We took them out, and what we found was one of the two glasses had what I would describe as an explosive effect in the bottom, as in it looked as if kind of like you were looking at shock waves coming out of the bottom of it, and at the very top, the water was curved. No joke. That sounds like something out of the fictional series Avatar: The Last Airbender, but we filmed this, and it's a replicable experiment.
Right. Okay. I'm not very familiar with the Avatar, the whatever bender it was, but
Oh,
uh,
it's a kids show.
right. Okay. That's probably why then. But that's really interesting. Is that this in the same way that Dr. Emoto's crystal photography has come about by, vibrations and intention and energy in the ether, I suppose, that is creating beautiful crystals from expressions of beauty, or not so beautiful crystals from expressions of negative emotions.
I've not extensively studied the works of Dr. Emoto, but what I can say is that ice is a great way of measuring effectiveness. And as for whether or not the end result was pretty, I would say so. So yeah, there could be overlaps between this and Dr. Emoto's research.
Right. I mean, I think the thing that strikes me and a lot of this stuff is people get they get skeptical of these things because they can't see it. They can't see, what's happening, and so therefore, but they can feel it, and that is clearly what's going on when you've presented this to the florist and what have you.
Well, I've had as a counter argument to this from people, oh, it's just a placebo effect. You're not really doing anything measurable. But really, a friend of mine who helped me assemble the ergonomic blanket, which is, one that you can actually get into, she suffered from trigeminal neuralgia. Do you know what that is?
No.
It's the worst pain in medical knowledge, and it's when a nerve sits up wrong in your head and compresses into itself. And apparently, it's on par with feeling like somebody is shoving a blowtorch into your face with zero exaggeration. So, you know, picture someone suffering from that and then
Right.
being given a sugar pill by a doctor who, even if they were a convincing liar, was giving them a sugar pill. I don't believe that would work unless you're a Darren Brown level hypnotist, for example. And she told me that it did reduce the pain a lot. What's more, against the backdrop of the Carillion cameras and the ice experiments, it's unlikely. You
Right.
add on to
Okay.
that, there's research I could point out, like the research of James DeMayo, Heiko Lassig, that chief among them, Heiko Lassig, made some really good research in the 1980s that's well worth taking a dive into.
So, I mean, it does, as you said before, it sounds too good to be true, but that doesn't mean to say that it doesn't work, obviously, because you've clearly had results, and the infrared camera, or the whatever camera it is showing the rays. So people can take advantage. I mean, it's not going to cost them much just to give it a try.
No, the thing is, we don't charge. I felt like it was unethical to do so because, well, just for obvious reasons. I mean, I lost a family member, my dad, to cancer in 2017, so I have a vested interest in researching medicine. I did originally intend for this to possibly help against cancer, but I got sidetracked with it relieving chronic pain. Oh, can't believe I forgot to say this. Take another guess at what it can hugely reduce.
Well, there's so many different things. Dementia.
Not to my knowledge, but I've been told by multiple friends of mine it can dramatically reduce period pain as well. So I was over the moon when I heard that, and I gave it to a friend of mine who was experiencing a really turbulent time in her life, and it did a lot for her. Now I need to make a distinction here. If you're thinking of making one and you have got a copper IUD, that's when the doctors put something into your cervical system to reduce menstrual pain, don't do it because it does not mix with copper. These things don't mix well with it at all, and it will actually backfire and make the pain worse if mixed with copper.
Right.
Also, don't use it if you have been exposed to, say, nuclear radiation in very recent times, or if you're point blank underneath a electrical pylon, for example, or up close and personal to a microwave. That would be unwise. But if
Right.
you don't tick any of those boxes, I
Yes.
believe personally that it's worth experimenting with.
Okay. And if anybody does, obviously they take their own risk. There's no liability, of course, that would come back to you, as we all do our due diligence. Is there anywhere in, I mean, because it's just a number of simple, almost household things that you would have, is there anywhere in life that you would automatically come across this without even knowing? I mean, presumably wire, wool, cotton, and tin might be in some other not intended for the purpose that you've done, but might well be in things that people may accidentally rub up against or something and go, oh, do you know, I feel so much better for just standing in this particular position.
The closest I could come up with is the game my brother and I played when we were kids, where you would rub your socks against the carpet and shock each other. Does that count?
I don't know. Well, I know. I was just curious because it is just a sort of basic household things. So, just talk us through again, just the what it is, so that if somebody wanted to do it, the tin has to be specifically tin and not aluminium or anything else.
Yeah, don't have an aluminium tin as they don't mix particularly well. Sorry, I had a cold last week.
Don't worry.
And after that, it's just a basic amount of pure cotton. Don't use polystyrene either. It has to be 100% pure cotton or wool. Wool is acceptable. And as for the metal, just get 000 non-aluminium steel wool. This is all specified in our how-to video, so
Right.
you can find a keen list of instructions there.
Okay. We'll send people over and they can and have a look. So and it's that simple. And to operate it, so to speak, I mean, you're using the open end. Is that where the energy is coming out of?
Yeah, energy comes out through here,
Yeah.
and it's as simple as just point it there and wait for a while. I should make another distinction, not as effective for tendon and muscular damage, but I'm reminded of a man who had a broken foot who I pointed it towards. And he was just in disbelief. He said of himself he was a convert. I think I've got a picture of myself with him actually. And he was a lot better. I even had to tell him, I'm happy for you, but please don't sprint, jump, or dance. Anything that you wouldn't do on a broken foot that did hurt, don't
Mm.
do it on one that doesn't, because it still needs rest. It takes the pain away, but I'm not saying that that means the injury is gone within that second. There's a difference. Someone with arthritis still has arthritis if they don't feel it, and someone with a
Right.
broken bone is the same.
No, well, that's an interesting thing to just to double. So you're not saying it in itself is healing the problem, but it is removing the uncomfortable nature of pain.
Yeah, that's a good way of summing it up. I've also used it for mood swings because I have post-traumatic stress disorder, and it does do a good job of making me not replay horror shows in my head.
And what would you do for that? Point it to your head.
No, no, actually, stomach. You'd think otherwise, but you pointed at the gut for issues with PTSD, at least in my experience. There's a side effect, though. It can make you feel kind of stoned or drunk, so don't operate machinery shortly
Right.
after using one of these things because you can get a bit tipsy off of them. I've been told
Yes.
this, I don't drink, but I've been told by people that do that it has this effect.
Right. Okay. And yeah. So don't operate machinery or don't get in the car and drive. Although it would be very hard if a policeman came around and said, "I'm sorry, you're obviously taking drugs," and you said, "No, it's just a tin can with some wire wool in it. What are you
Well, they
talking about?"
probably would not be able to formally convict you for being stoned, but
No,
don't take the risk.
don't take the risk. No, no, I was just making light of it, which I know I shouldn't do.
That's all right.
Good. So, how long have you been into exploring this sort of thing?
The irony is, I discovered this while I was bored out of my mind in summer of 2020 for obvious reasons.
Right.
And I was thinking to myself, I recall watching a fun channel when I was about 12 or something, maybe even no, 9, really low. And I decided to look it up to see if I could find anything vaguely interesting. But when I looked at stuff they don't want you to know, orgon energy by how stuff works, that was a series is discontinued now. A damn shame because it was great. It was very good, and it was hugely ahead of its time in the YouTube scene. They covered hundreds of subjects. Among them was orgone energy, and I developed an interest because it did seem quite easy to follow. I thought, well, you know, I can't make a huge box, but that does sound easy enough to make on a small scale, so I did. And, from there I just kept on experimenting.
Wow. Oh, okay. And what would you? How would you describe orgon energy itself?
That's quite the question. A very little understood uh, summary of how do you describe this? A little known phenomenon of energy that has some connections with electromagnetic principles. I've not delved that deep into organ energy itself, just what it can be used
What it can be
for.
used for, but
If you're
somehow or other.
religious, you might make the point that it gives you the presence of God or makes you feel connected to the soul. I'm an agnostic myself, so I don't have much to add to that, but I can see where people are coming from.
Oh, okay. But in some ways, the process that is the orgon energy that is created from the device that you have made is, as you said, it's spoofing it's fooling your body to take away the pain.
Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. I mean, a lot of people will be going, "Hang on, that's not too difficult to try," and you've got the videos to show people.
Yeah, and for
What?
those skeptics, I want to point something out. My brother is a huge detractor of this stuff. I mean, with one exception, I think he's the most hateful towards it of anybody I know.
I mean, going back to the suppressed medical equipment, and you mentioned before we started recording, you could talk for hours on all sorts of other stuff that's out there. And as you said, you may come back and do another one about other things. There are other devices out there. Could you share perhaps one other sort of one that you've been researching just before we go?
Yeah, one of my favorites would probably be the Hoxie tonic. Does the name Harry Hoxie mean anything to you?
I may have heard it. I can't tell you in what connection.
Harry Hoxie's great grandfather saw his horse eating plants when it was sick with cancer, and the horse, I can't believe I'm saying this, right?
Mm.
A horse beat us to the punch in discovering the cure for cancer, if this is to be believed. That's a big
Right.
if, but I just want to make the point that a horse
Yeah.
might have beaten us to the punch.
But
So
I mean,
great
I don't doesn't.
granddad, I'll spare you,
Sorry.
I'll spare you the full story. The Hoxie tonic was brought down between generations, and Harry Hoxie in particular did his best to promote it and make it known to the public, and was selling and also just providing it to people in Texas, in Houston. He would take money for it, but if you couldn't pay, then he would give it to you for free, as do I. And he was faced enormous opposition from the AMA, chiefly by Morris Fishbein, and was forced to take the clinic over to Mexico. And you can actually, it's still there. It's still there in Tijuana, Mexico, the Hoxie Clinic. Not in the name, they took that out of the name to avoid trouble, but you can still find it in Tijuana, Mexico. And this tonic was stated to have an 85% success rate. And there's footage of Harry Hoxie just taunting, brazenly taunting and provoking the medical industry with statements like, get over here and make an investigation and run your experiments on my tonic. And if I do not prove that this tonic cures cancer, then I will shut my doors indefinitely. And I'm not presenting it as factual that the Hoxie tonic works, but I do believe it'd be worth talking about. So if you want me to divulge more on that, I'd be more than happy to.
Well, brilliant. Well, let's hope next time you've got rid of the cold. I'm taking it. I mean, it's interesting. The orgon energy orgonometer. It doesn't affect. It's not helping colds and flus, and you're not saying it does any of that,
Oh, it takes the sting out of them a little bit, but it doesn't do
right?
much for my cough, for
So if
example.
you've got a sore throat, for example, it will ease that. Do you think?
Well, you want me to find out? Oh yeah, another thing I forgot to mention. Don't touch yourself with it. That worsens the effect because of how electromagnetics work. But if you keep it slightly at a distance, then it's easier.
Right. Oh, interesting.
And I do feel better just off the top of my head. I do feel less of that tickly cough.
Excellent. Oh well, there we are. It saves you having to buy any of those smoothers or those cough sweets or anything like that.
Yeah. Well, I believe that covers the story of the organometer, and
Well, I'm very
If
pleased.
anyone wants to, if anyone wishes to read deeper, oh, I'm back in action. You can find me under Anomaly Research Labs. We've got various documentaries on suppressed medical technology and a how-to guide on making your own organometer. Again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not saying do this strictly in place of talking to an expert, but if you want to delve a bit deeper, I've got some stuff to share.
Fantastic. Well, listen, Phil, thank you so much for talking to us and sharing your knowledge and your experimentations with this. It's been absolutely fascinating to learn that. And also, I think it encourages people that the answers to many of the problems that we face are not necessarily in large concrete buildings of millions of dollars with people who've in white coats with stethoscopes, that many of the answers are actually out there in front of us in the world around us and have been available, and people have been trying to tell people about these, but it has been suppressed. So I really appreciate you sharing that knowledge. It's been fascinating.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. Well, there we are, ladies and gentlemen. I'll leave all the links in the description. In the meantime, I shall be back with more monologues and more wonderful guests. But until that time, from Phil and myself, thanks for watching. Till next
Right.
time,
Thank you very much.
goodbye.